Hi guys, I hope you're doing well and hanging in there through this intense period of time. I wanted to come back on and talk about some things. We can touch base on the cards from my last reading, but I also have a couple of messages that I wanted to pass on that I feel I'm getting on the situation. And also we can do another reading and see if there's anything new that we can see about the situation in the cards. You know, like for instance, we have this Two of Pentacles here at the top of the reading, which is still things being in flux and unsure. Now, so just to be clear, the cards I have in front of me for the first half of my video, while I talk about messages and some more solidified thoughts on things, are from my last reading on the election outcome situation, which I did a few weeks ago. And I do a new reading on the situation with new cards about 24 minutes in. And those cards are very interesting. And as always, I welcome you to follow along and share any hits or impressions you get in the comments. Now, we're talking about the 2024 election. And I realize, you know, it's been called, but a lot of people, if you saw my last video, a lot of people feel that something very strange happened. There's a lot of things that just seemed unexpected, like for instance, that he won and to the degree he did. And, you know, there was just a lot of weird things leading up to it. A lot of weird characters involved, sort of financing him, the puppet masters, the foreign interests, that sort of thing. It's just all so shady. And I know there's some people, I want to start out by saying, there are people who don't think we should read on this sort of thing as if it's a false hope, like a hopium or a copium that isn't good for us. I disagree with that. And I only say that because I actually contemplated it. And I decided, you know, the fact is it's actually quite healthy when you see something wrong for you to believe that someone's going to make it right. I think that we should see what we see and expect what we should expect. I do understand if people don't want, maybe they think it's indulgent. I don't. But again, we've been through trauma in these past 10 years, and I do understand. And people have different ways of dealing with that. But here, I have no problem reading on it and considering it and even expecting it and hoping for it. I think that we're grounded and down to earth enough to know there could be some disappointing outcomes. But no matter what, you know, and this actually gets to one of the messages I got when I was contemplating all of this. There's a truth that is stronger than all the lies. So I'm like, I wake up in the morning and I for a while, and this is still happening, I don't know how to align myself to like what's real in the world. Like basically, what's the timeline? For a while, it's like that shock thing where you have to like remember everything that happened with that election. And, you know, is this where we are now? And then you say, well, or is there hope that this other timeline could happen where wrong things are made right? What do I connect to? So I'm asking my guides, like, what do I connect to? Is it indulgent of me to go over here or whatever? And I get this message, you are the eyes of the world. And I don't mean me specifically. I mean the message, sort of a general, like, you who can see, those who can see, you are the eyes of the world. And it was so meaningful to me in that moment. And I think you might understand that in your own way without me explaining it, but I'll try to say what it means to me and also what I picture in my mind with that. First of all, if you see the truth, own that. It doesn't mean you have to even be loud about it, because you sitting calmly with the truth and knowing that is meaningful and powerful. And I believe that's sort of our role right now, is to just collectively, when you see the truth, like not falling into the lies that are being sold on this other, I'll just say lower level. Because when I see it, it's like being the eyes of the world. You're up above the clouds even. That's how I see it in my mind's eye. And it's very quiet. It's very calm, peaceful, and we're not alone. There's so many eyes of the world and work joining that collective as the chaos happens down here on this lower level. And you can be in both places. You can keep yourself up here and then also observe things happening here. And I've been asking for years, like sort of things that I had been driven to do in my life. I started falling apart, and I just was kind of lost, well, what am I supposed to do? And I ask this a lot to my guides, and often, especially lately, what I get is just observe. It's okay to observe. There's something to that. If you feel well, I need to be active, obviously be active. But if you feel I don't know what it is, I don't want to be active, but I care, just know that this energy up here is really powerful and important. And I actually believe that telepathy is real. So just standing in truth, when you see lies, and you just stand there in your truth, and you know a lie when you see it, you don't even have to react in an angry way. You just are a collective seer of the truth, and there is power to that. It creates an energy field that is more powerful than the lies. Because the lies are not, when we talk about Don the Khan, he just doesn't have energy on his side. And that's why he has to create all this chaos and energy he's trying to solidify a timeline that makes him powerful. I see them trying to do that here. And in that level, you have to be harsh and severe. You're trying to bring all these other consciousnesses down into your little scary world that you're creating, and that gives it more energy. Basically, it answered my question about what am I supposed to align with. It's not about one outcome or another as much as it is just aligning with what feels most true and good and right and most beneficial for all, and what we would like the world to be. And waiting for that to be the majority energy that's able to take precedent on Earth, however that has to play out or however long it takes, but hopefully sooner than later. And so anyway, if that helps any of you, I just wanted to pass that on. And I honestly kept feeling like I need to come on and pass on that message. And by the way, there is a song that might have popped into your head. It's a Grateful Dead song, and that song has been in my head, and it's not even one that I get sick of. I'm keep it playing. I think it's just called Eyes of the World, but it goes, wake up to find out that you are the eyes of the world. So, and it's a great song if you sort of want to get away from stress and feel that sort of hippy dippy feeling or happy feeling. And, it's kind of simple lyrics, but it's also kind of deep. So just basically knowing that just being in truth has its own powerful effect in this world, for this world. And maybe it's being up here and also being down here, where we can act as a bridge. We bring in the truth energy, and the truth energy just simply dissipates the lie energy. Anyway, that's how I see it. I don't know if we can make it happen enough for this to play out quickly, but no matter what, we just stick to it. Some of you might also have thought of another thing with that lyric, because I know a lot of you wrote comments asking about, I believe it's called the Five Eyes, which is sort of a worldwide intelligence group made up of 5 different countries that are allies of the US. I think it's Australia, Canada, UK, US, and I apologize. I'll do a screenshot here with the countries included, but we'll get into that a little more with my second message, which is another thing I did to try to get clarity on what's the reality that I should align to. And I specifically sort of tried to zone in on Joe Biden, okay? And I'm Joe, what's going on? Is it do you see what we see? And are you gonna do anything about it? Is there anything happening? And he looked at me and he said, this is an act of war. And I sort of want to say the whole full message up front because I end up taking each piece one by one. And this is for entertainment purposes only, just my intuition, not real news. He said, this is an act of war. He pointed up and said, it's in the hands of the generals now. I got military tribunal, and he called me kid, which actually has an interesting follow-up story to it, as I will explain. And by the way, that just in itself made a lot of things clear to me, and sort of because a lot of these other questions I had been asking, why don't we see more happening before our eyes? Why aren't we seeing Kamala call for recounts? Why aren't we seeing like investigations opening up? I mean, by the way, there were literally BOMB threats, about 60 of them, maybe more, on voting stations on voting day. That in itself should be an investigation. And the fact that it's just like barely reported on, it's just, there's something weird, right? And I'll also say there's sort of a psychic Q&A that I do with my guides sometimes when I'm trying to get info. It's kind of what you would expect from a pendulum, where you ask and you get a flow. It's actually Cash Peters does it, and it's like yes and no. And I was asking before I got this, well, I asked the overall, was there a crime? Was this election tampered with, And I do get that it was. For entertainment purposes only, I'm not reporting news here. This is intuition. And I was like, okay, is the FBI looking into it? And I got, no. Is the DOJ looking into it? No. I even, is the CIA looking into it? No. I'm like, well, who's looking into it, right? And so when Joe said to me, this is an act of war, he pointed up, and basically like, what I got was like, this is going to the generals, okay? This is with the generals now. And military tribunal. And I even looked up military tribunal. It sounds like a gigantic thing. It's just a military court. And it all made so much sense to me in a lot of different ways, okay? And I even tried to talk to Joe, and I said, but you're the commander-in-chief. This is you. And he gives me very much the impression, he's like, I've got a country to run. I have passed this on to the appropriate, where this needs to be handled, which is military. I don't mean for it to sound like he doesn't care or it's not important, but he did seem sort of pointed about passing it on, which makes a lot of sense because he would want to be sure not to tarnish any investigation that would be looked into later after the fact by his own hands being on it, since he has a personal interest in the outcome. And it of course, made a lot of sense to me because I believe that this was the country starting with an R, right? And and maybe that would tie into the BOMB threats as well. That's interesting. Yeah. That this being from a foreign entity on our elections would be that. And we did get here in my reading, we do get Harris beneath the surface of things. We have the moon, like things are being discussed, but it's more like quiet. I do see the, illusion, delusion, and the loss. I do see some powers working with her. And weirdly, like way beneath the surface, I do see the White House here sort of backing away, I guess, from it. It's a little hush-hush. There's a little hush-hush element to it. I know we think of military and generals as handling like ground wars. But, and I've even looked into this, like, is the military prepared, or do they have people in place that would handle a cyber attack type war? And they absolutely do. There was even a woman put in, so there's a military intelligence department called the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, and they sort of work with the DoD, the Department of Defense. And I'm like, is the Defense Intelligence Agency addressing the 2024 election interference? Yes. Wow. Are they going to take action that the American public will be aware of. Yes. It gives me such a nervous feeling, I swear. What else? Is this considered an act of war? Yes. So I have to share the weirdest coincidence that is almost to the point of spooky, and I also think validation of the message I got. So as I was editing this video, I got a text from a friend. And as I've said on here, I'm not even watching the news anymore, so I didn't know this was happening. I don't even know if it's a big story, but he mentions to me how Biden should pardon the generals before he goes because of how Trump is threatening them. And I'm like, Trump is threatening generals? Why are you saying that? And he explains a little, and I look it up, and it turns out Trump is announcing a plan to court-martial military generals as soon as he gets into office. Don the Con is literally calling the generals treasonous, which I'm sure is what he knows they're going to call him. And he's calling them Democrats, which is another way he tries to politicize things that are not political. So no matter how Donald and team are framing this, I believe this is a ploy to get ahead of what they are afraid could come down on them. And another thing, once I found the article and opened it and started reading it, my left ear started ringing like crazy with all this activity. And I knew that that was more validation for me. And I'm very struck by this in a chilling way because this is what he does when he knows someone's going to go after him. He attacks first. And I couldn't believe my friend happened to randomly mention this to me right as I'm editing this. I think they want to deter the military from daring to come down and expose things about this election. They want to make the U.S. military look terrible if they were to come out with the truth. It just lends accuracy to the possibility that this crime may very well be in the hands of the military and the generals. So I guess we send some light and I only hope that they bypass any games, release any evidence, say what they need to say, so that the tricksters don't win this game, and the truth does. Oh, and another interesting thing that is validating to me about when I, got my message from Biden is he called me kid. Or I thought, did he just call me kid? Kind of like, this is an act of war, kid. Or there was like an element of kid. And I kind of just laughed it off. I'm like, maybe he says that. Maybe, do I know he says that? I'm not sure I do, but I kind of like laughed it off. And then within like a couple hours, I'm on the internet and I see that Joe Biden is making a speech. And I clicked on it and I listened to like the last 5 minutes of his speech. And he starts talking to his wife and he calls her kid. And I was like, oh my God, he just said kid. And it just, it felt like validating, like, maybe I really did get that message, so just thought I'd pass that on. It's always helpful. So what else? So we talked about Eyes of the World. We talked about the Joe Biden act of war, and it does explain a lot of things, like perhaps this is why you wouldn't see things happening on the county level and all of that, because it might be bigger in a way. And I don't know how they would handle it. By the way, I'm on a thread on, I'm on Reddit a lot lately, and there's a subreddit that I want to share with you guys called Something is Wrong 2024. And every post is just like-minded people saying something is wrong. This does not seem right. And then there are letters coming out from people in high-level tech positions who are saying this does not seem right. This should be investigated. So we're not just in a fantasy here, and that is all we want. We want things to be deeply investigated, like a forensic whatever investigation to find out, did something happen when these threats happened, when the offices were cleared out? What's the deal with this? And why is it so unnatural? And everything that Don the Con is doing since then is so sketchy. He's even threatening to sue the woman who did the poll, the Iowa poll that had Harris winning. It is so sketchy to me because she still to this day can't understand why that happened. Remember that the FBI did a search of the Polymarket CEO who has a betting site, and there was an impression that betting site made that Don the Con was ahead, and that helps his case. He can point to this and say, this was this. And I remember headlines coming out saying, well, apparently this betting site is getting all the, so you just hope that this is really seriously being looked into. And there's also the concern that even if what we might hope, which is the truth, comes out, is it going to, it's like, unfortunately, there's so many forces at play that would be a huge tower. So we're going to see if the tower happens, because they're really trying to build this idea that he's in line and there's no question. And if there is suddenly a question, it's going to be like the biggest, very crazy thing to happen in this country ever, for sure. And it would not be an easy outcome to mess around with. And it's interesting in this reading, I thought a lot about this magician and emperor, which is basically like the final outcome comes down to this magician and this empire. I keep saying this empire, which is so interesting, because I feel like that's kind of what they want to create. Like Don the Con and his team of magicians, right? They sort of want to create this empire. Watching back, it really strikes me that, of course, Papa Vlad, from the country that starts with an R, his whole drive and everything he does is to create a new Russian empire. And I am certain that this drive is very connected to this moment for us right now. But there's another, it's like all I have to do is just do a little switch, and it can become, it's basically whoever comes out the most powerfully takes the outcome. Could this be our commander-in-chief, Joe Biden and his group? And this would be, to me, a bunch of intelligence agencies and a bunch of different evidence, and taking the power that is yours. Who's going to take the power, basically? Because this, and then I do a little switch, and now it's, interesting. I just thought of I just got The Empire Strikes Back, right? Like, you've got Darth Vader. Like, that's what we're dealing with. Is this Darth Vader, Don the Con, with his magicians taking the power? Or is this going to be our military and commander-in-chief saying, hold on, this needs to be looked at? And looked at, here we have the Hermit here, and there is people trying to hold their ground, there's stress. And the Lovers, which is my card for Don the Con and his Papa Vlad, I'll say, which I think is exactly like this reading says, at the heart of it, or like the foundational issue at hand, is this Lovers. Oh, and by the way, when I did do is it the DOJ, is it the CIA, and I was getting no on all those, I did get a yes for Jack Smith, which is interesting because he's basic. So I'm like, how can it be Jack Smith but not the DOJ that's looking into this? And it actually kind of makes sense. He's on his way out there, but he could have his hand in other things, or he could have passed on his evidence to the military intelligence, because maybe that's where he knows it belongs, because it involves, and I even looked, like, what counts as an act of war? And certainly, yes, in getting into another country's election, yes. I even find it a little interesting here. This is an illusion delusion card, but like more with that cloud, which maybe it's not like the technical cloud, but sort of like where the illusion delusion coming from. Who knows, like, what got messed with that was not just like the natural voting. And there's smarter people than me explaining this, sort of more technical ways of seeing that things seem to have been messed with. So from here, I think we will move on to a reading. Okay, so I've decided to use this different deck. This is the One World Tarot. It's awesome. The question, or the way I want to pose my question. So we're reaching out to guides and angels. We hope that we can receive the truth of the situation and see it clearly. And what we want to know is about the ultimate outcome of this election in the next month and a half. Today's December 1st, so I put 5 cards upside down, that's all. So we want to know, is there action being taken? Is this going to be a big deal? Are things going to come out? Is there going to, if we see a lot of like aces coming out, we might see that new things are going to come out. There might be change. Oh, all right. 8 of Pentacles, okay. This could be people hard at work on the details, the numbers. I see this as very easily if we have forensic, examinations being done of the election numbers, the votes, then I do see that here. So I think that's there, okay? So we've got some work being done at that level, which is what we want. And maybe they just don't tell us because they want to wait and see what they get. Knight of Wands. So there is someone going for it. This is action being taken. Okay, so, but I always have to remember that this is a covering card. So yeah, I think they have the examination of things happening, and it is being covered though by different ways of resisting. That's what I see, like this Knight of Wands. It's like different ways of coming out. Like I can't even watch the news. I get little tidbits in my own way. So I don't really know, but maybe there are people coming out in little ways to say, to resist and point things out that is just wrong with how things are going, which is a lot. I do not envy those people having to come out and say, this is terrible and this is terrible and this. So what's happening on the surface of this election situation? This would be like what we see. Queen of Cups, interesting. I feel like this one wanted to come out too. So the Chariot, okay. I think that this might be referring actually to Harris. And maybe we see her as sort of, what are you doing? Like this is a queen that is floating, that is emotional, that is like 1 foot in the water, 1 foot on a tiny piece of land. Maybe we're just like, are you going to do something? And it's interesting that the Chariot is here and kind of came out second. Maybe, we see one thing, but in fact, there is more going on with this Chariot, which would mean like, go forward moving. Something I should have realized right away is that the Chariot is literally the card of the military. It is actually depicting a military operation going full speed ahead. So that's a very strong message here on our topic that Harris is feeling a bit lost and possibly insecure and not so much in control, but is working with the military and going along full speed ahead. And it could also be representing the opposing force that overshadows Harris, which is the presumed next administration, and their plans coming out, which are also extremely aggressive. So again, with that double meaning showing up in the cards, 2 overshadowing timelines at play, which is another meaning of the Chariot, 2 opposing forces, battling for dominance. And I wonder if it says that we will see more of this. I mean, we're not seeing it yet unless something happened today. We are definitely not seeing her taking any action. Oh, 10 of Swords in the past. Okay, this would obviously be the terrible election day. But it's interesting that it's in this past position. I mean, it was in the past, but a lot of times in this side of the reading, it's like, you need to get rid of this. So you need to get out of this mindset of an ending. 10 of Swords is also an ending. It's a loss. Like maybe you need to get out of that mindset and get into this Chariot, which is moving forward. Get into this Knight of Wands, which would be resistance. So let's see what could come in as we let go of this ending where you just got destroyed. The Sun, it's a brand new day. Okay, this is really good. I like to see this, especially with this 10 of Swords here. This is the terrible ending going in the past and the Sun coming in. This would be clarity. Oh my gosh. And I remember when I first did my reading with Harris with the election, before the election, and I'm like, if I see the Sun card, that's it. And I got the Sun card in the middle, but it was covered by something else. And so later I went back and I'm like, I think she did win, And something, I can't remember what covered it, but it eventually made sense, is that like you didn't see the win, you know? So maybe we will see it. These cards are really interesting. Oh, 10 of Pentacles at the bottom. Okay, so that's interesting. 10 of Pentacles would basically be the majority of the votes for me for this reading. This card, it's another 10. This would be like the win. This would be like an inheritance. It's big, it's everything. You know, this would be sort of driving the rest of it, and you know, like saying, like starting here, this guy sort of examining the votes, right? And then here we have this 10 of Pentacles. It's like, I don't know if they found votes or if this is about like, there's something here driving the votes that is rich. There's a wealth of something here. Could this be a wealth of evidence that's growing beneath the surface? Maybe it's the win that we all thought was coming for Harris that somehow didn't materialize. At least not in a way that we, the public, could see. But maybe they can see it now. I hope so. Which would lead to them deciding, yes, things are moving forward. Okay, where do we find ourselves? Yeah, this 9 of Wands would be us a lot, trying to hold our ground and trying to be heard and seen. Excuse me, like this guy has like a broken leg and a broken arm and is still trying to be like, excuse me, this is my land, this is my country, and I think something's wrong, and could you do something? Like, can we not just like say, well, like they got away with it, oh well, like can we at least examine this? Okay, what else? How do others see us? Queen of Swords again. I got the Queen of Swords in this exact spot last time, and I'm like, who is this woman? There's a woman that knows. And I'm getting dizzy on this. I wonder if it's that woman I saw that was, okay, so like in 2020, Biden put like a new deputy. By the way, I keep saying 2020. It was actually January 2023 that she was put into this spot, which is even more telling to me, I think. Sort of like at first I thought she was like the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, but then I saw, okay, she's not, but she's an expert on this. So in 2020, they put someone in that is an expert on this exact topic. So this is why I think they were always seeing it coming. And maybe they even let it happen in a way so that they could do what they need to do. Because I feel if they didn't see this coming and they're just after the fact looking into it, it's almost too late. Like you had to be having your spies in there and like knowing what to look for and seeing it and getting it as your evidence, this wealth of evidence. And another couple of things that are interesting I'm going to say about when I look into it. When I see Trump going to the White House and sitting with Biden and hanging out with Biden for 2 hours, it makes me like laugh because I cannot help. I mean, you know, like you can read cards, you can read something you see on TV too. And when I read that, I'm like, Biden is playing this guy. Like, he's like, hey, big boy, hey, kiddo, look what, there's kiddo again. But like, look what you did, big winner. You know what I mean? And sort of like, it's like he wants to do everything he can to make Don the con feel like you so got away with your con, buddy. You've got nothing to worry about. Like, wow, you did it. And also that Biden almost right away did a huge contribution to the Ukraine efforts to defend themselves. Like that was like huge. Like when you see that election happen and then you see him do that, it's like, oh, there might be another layer to everything we're seeing. Oh, and there was another thing that someone has pointed out. A month or two before the election, there were a bunch of right-wingers there was evidence that came out that they were being paid by Russia, right, to spread disinformation, which also makes you think they are looking at this beforehand. So that is hopeful to me. Okay, so let's see. Hopes and fears. 8 of Swords, of course. This is what we're in. We feel trapped in this, right? This was in my original reading on the election, and I knew we would be trapped for a little while. I did not think we would be this trapped, but that's the feeling. And there is an interesting side of this card where she's not really trapped. She can get out of this if she wants to. So there might be an interesting message in that. Like, it's like we feel trapped. Are we trapped? Final outcome. You know, part of me feels like this can't just be a recount. Like, I feel like it's not going to be that simple because it's going to be so complex what has happened. And I almost feel like we'll have to have a do-over, if at all. And the only way we would do that is if Congress decided it. And I felt that in my original reading on the election, that Congress would eventually have to make a decision on something. And I felt like they would make the right decision. But, you know, I don't think it would go to the Supreme Court. I just feel like it'll go to Congress. And I wonder if that's going to happen. I don't know. Let's see. Final outcome. How is this election going to play out? I haven't had any upside down cards, which is interesting. The High Priestess, again, she keeps coming up. The High Priestess is, first of all, this is like that eyes of the world feeling. Like, if you see the truth, sit with the truth, know the truth. That's your only job. How the rest of it plays out is, you know, up to higher powers that we just need to trust. There is also, I always notice her scroll that she's holding. The truth is known in those scrolls. That's like the book of life kind of scroll. So I wonder, like, and part of me also feels like I keep wanting to mention that idea of like, is this a glimpse? Like that this needed to happen. And there's another Reddit topic called "A Leopard Ate My Face 2024," something like that. But it's people talking about the people who voted for Don the Con realizing what they voted for and having that regret. And I feel like this is a big necessary part of this time period. There's a higher wisdom to this, and never think of it as, well, this is the end, this is the most terrible, this is it. But this is a glimpse, whether it lasts a short time or a long time. So let's see what else. We have the High Priestess as a final outcome. She is trying to have us be calm and wise and let this play. The Tower. This is the Tower I kind of actually wanted to see in this, and it's upright. Wow, chills on that. Oh my gosh. And it's like, look at these people jumping out of the tower. Oh my God, an Ace of Wands. I wanted to see an Ace too. So I think the final outcome, we might see something bigger than just, here it goes. Just like the news says, this is all just gonna happen like normal. It's all very normal. I don't think so. By the way, I want to point out the Chariot is also often for people a military card. That's so interesting because the military card, this card wanted to come out with this card. So she is in touch with military intelligence, military people on this. They are in touch with her. That's what I think I'm getting for entertainment purposes only. And, like, forgive me if it doesn't turn into this, but this is what the cards are showing us. You guys know too, I'm sure, can see it in those cards as well, An Ace of Wands is a brand new thing. It's a judgment. I mean, you've got like a judge hitting down the gavel with this card. The Tower is like whatever they built up, it's gonna crumble down, These are three powerful cards, so that just doesn't feel, okay, if I'm gonna be fair, it just doesn't feel like this is Don the Con taking his, with the High Priestess there, it doesn't feel like Don the Con taking his seat. I feel like if there was a tower, we're already like, that for us happened election night, not here. So let's see what else. I usually like to do 4 here, sort of like another mini 3 of Cups. Oh my God, that makes me laugh and smile, and there's Justice. So this, which I also got in my original reading, almost in the same spot on the election, which is Democrats celebrating. So they're back again. They are back again at the final outcome, which could mean like we're still aligned with that final outcome. Whew, I'm like out of breath from all this. And then we have Justice here beneath the surface. Again, like, oh, and then this Ace of Cups just got left there when I picked up the deck. So I'll take that as another message here. This is very happy. This is overflowing of love and emotion. If you remember, before I even threw these cards, I hoped to see a tower and aces. And here we have the tower and 2 aces. Again, aces being brand new, big things. The tower because it would sort of shake down what has been built up since the election. And the tower falls because it's not built on a solid foundation. So, interesting. Which, by the way, like, that can be super happy. I feel like if something like this were to come out and happen, and like, it'll be an overflow of all kinds of emotion. But this justice feels very balanced and very steady. This 9 of Cups came up in my last reading right here. This is the happy merchant. I believe that the justice, and then the stealing, and then the moon in the dark of, in the sort of secrets of it all, and the theater, gosh, and the 7 of, the illusion delusion, the desire to take the world. I mean, like, this is just going on and on, telling me so many stories. The loss here, and then like an offer. There was an offer to affect the election, take the world. You got to take it in your own hands, bang those pots and pans. Illusion delusion, create the illusion delusion, create that like false timeline. This is just more theater. I feel like a lot of the pics are theater that's happening. Look at that mask. It's like everything's fake. You don't have to, you can look at that stuff and say, you are not serious people, or like, you know, this is not, you are not the real deal. And we see that. We are the eyes of the world. We observe, we see truth, and we see lies, and we just stand in truth. That's it. Stand in truth. Yeah. And the judgment, I think, will come upon, I don't know that you're going to see Don the Con, you know, get arrested or, you know, charged necessarily. I believe he would be considered just a sort of observer of what other people are doing. But I think we might see some things come down on, like, for instance, like certain people who were part of the scheme. And I would think if this is a sort of military maneuvering that's happening, that, you know, it's a little hard to come down on the leader, Vlad, from the country that starts with R. There are already warrants out for his arrest on the world stage. Like, it doesn't matter to him, but it should, if the arrest comes out, or like something happens that gives the evidence, our Congress would have to decide what to do with that. It could be a really crazy thing. We do have here that there is big crazy stuff coming. I think it's interesting, the glimpse that people are able to have in this period of time, that maybe there won't be such an uproar when the time comes, because I'm hoping that people realize you guys got conned. Like, all of this was a con, you know? So let's just keep holding on to that energy and just doing our best, observing, and being a community. I appreciate you all so much. I always am grateful for your very kind and nice comments. So thanks again for being here. I appreciate you all, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.